So, I've never done one of these videos before, but since I love iceberg content so much, I figured we could take a crack at it. Today we'll be taking a look at the SLIPKNOT iceberg. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you already know what an iceberg is. It's a meme, basically, where the more you go down the iceberg, the more cryptic and obscure the information about the said topic gets. Okay, so without further ado, let's take a look. Studio albums. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's just referring to the band's 6 mainline albums. It's probably positioned as the first item on this iceberg because it symbolizes what the most casual listener would probably know about regarding the band. Jump the fuck up. This is referring to a trope that the band hosts when performing Spit It Out. During a particular moment in the song, Taylor usually calls on the audience to jump the fuck up. Apparently the first time they ever did this was about the year 2000 on Paul's birthday. I think the show was in Canada, supposedly. And Corey was just like, let's try something new, everybody jump the fuck up. So I guess that's kind of where it birthed from. The 9. I guess this is just referring to the fact that the band has always been known to contain 9 members. Maggots. This is also relatively common information, but maggots are what Slipknot call their fans in the same fashion that Grateful Dead fans are known as deadheads, or the Red Chord fans are known as Chordians. New masks every album. This is referring to how the band are known to usually update their masks every single time a new album is being released. However, if I do recall correctly, I think most of the members retain the same mask between the self-titled album and 2001's Iowa, so that would technically be the only exception to this item, but this is still mostly true anyway. Tortilla Man. Tortilla Man was the name given to an unknown percussionist who joined the band in 2019 after Chris Fain's departure. For a while, his identity was kept a secret, and it led to a big search to find out who he was until his identity was finally leaked in the fan community sometime in 2020. 2 original members are dead. Obviously, this is referring to the deaths of bassist Paul Gray, who died in 2010, and most recently drummer Joey Jordison, who died in July of 2021. Let me just say this. I honestly can't believe I had the fortune of seeing Slipknot play live when both of them were still alive, and because of that, this portion hurts to think about, but at least they're both being properly remembered, I can say that much. Purgatory masks. The Purgatory masks were the large paper machete masks that the band wore during the promotional campaign for All Hope Is Gone. To me, these masks were always the most unnerving aesthetically, so thankfully the band never did much with these besides just wear them a couple times in some eerie All Hope Is Gone shoots. I never liked these masks too much, so we're gonna move on. Stone Sour isn't a side project. I can't say for certain what this means, but if I were to take a guess, I believe it refers to how there was some kind of fan misconception that Stone Sour is a side project, when it was actually Corey Taylor's original band before he even joined Slipknot to begin with. Slipknot just happened to be more commercially successful than Stone Sour ever got to be, so for that reason I guess the early Slipknot fan community assumed it was just a side band. Vertical rotating drum set. One of the most notable stunts the band were known for was how Joey would perform on a rotating hydraulic-powered machine that would tilt him sideways and even upside down, all the while playing his drum kit. It's just another reason why I think Jordison will forever go down as a legend, honestly. Corey Taylor is not the original vocalist / Mate Feed Kill Repeat. I figured I'd just combine these two together since they kind of directly correlate to each other. Anyway, I feel like this is relatively entry-level information, but for those of you that don't know, Taylor is not the original Slipknot vocalist. The actual original frontman is Anders Kolsefini. Kolsefini's biggest contribution, arguably, is for his work on Mate Feed Kill Repeat. What that is a demo album. Originally it was deemed Slipknot's first album when it came out, but because of their signing to Roadrunner, they kind of like swept it under the rug, you know, like buried it, and deemed it a demo instead since then, which I feel was the right move because the sound of the record is really kind of just like inconsistent compared to like what they know and are for now. You know, it's really experimental, funk influence. It doesn't really feel right to technically be called the true debut Slipknot album because it's really eccentric and, you know, but still the album is a pretty good listen and it's worth checking out if you've never heard it before. If you like Mr. Bungle or Fear Factory, you know, stuff like that, you'll probably enjoy it. Vermilion death masks. The death masks are a special type of mask that the band had made and designed specifically for their song Vermilion, and Slipknot generally have been seen to switch out of their usual masks for these death masks whenever they perform the song live. Meld. I'm actually kind of surprised that this item is this high up on the iceberg, because I feel like it's kind of more obscure compared to the other things around it. But anyway, Kun Nong, who's also known by the name Meld, was a very early guitar player for the band, who was known to only participate in about 6 rehearsals before he quit. The reason why he quit was generally just because metal wasn't really his thing. He was apparently more of a alternative and punk rock kind of guy. Other info about him is that apparently he was born in Thailand and he never wore a mask while he was in the band. Frail Limb Nursery. Okay, so to explain this in the best way I can without going like too much into detail, Frail Limb Nursery is a interlude / intro song to another song that Slipknot had recorded for their debut album. The other song, titled Purity, is about a girl that was buried in a box. It was basically like this scary story. Basically think like an early creepypasta. That's basically what it was. But the band members, Corey Taylor in specific, thought the story was real, and so they wrote a song about it. Roadrunner, finding out that the theme of the song was not a real case, they didn't really take it too kindly, so they kind of was like, you can't do that. We got to get these songs off the record. I'm not going to risk taking someone else's intellectual property. So both Frail Limb Nursery and Purity were removed off the original pressing of the 1999 self-titled album for that reason. Since then, however, Purity has ended up on later pressings of the album, but to this day, Frail Limb Nursery has never seen a inclusion on any official release of the album, despite many, many represses. It's never came out. The song is still very easily findable, and the story behind it is really interesting, so it's worth checking out. Chris Fane lawsuit. This refers to the lawsuit percussionist Chris Fane initiated out of royalty conflicts with the band, which also led to him re-signing from Slipknot. If you want to get into specifics, I recommend you read up on some news articles that covered it when it happened, but that's basically the gist of it. Corey Taylor in The Wall. So, for those of you that don't know, Corey was in the really, really cancerous The Wall review by Nostalgia Critic. It's really dumb, and I don't even get why he was in it to begin with. Maybe they were just friends, and he just had the idea to get Corey to make a cameo in, the last minute, but, kinda wish he didn't. Let's just be real. Sid Wilson broke both his ankles. Sid Wilson, being the youngest member of the band, kind of has a history of doing reckless things during the band's live shows, most notably his tendency to jump off the stage, which resulted in him misplacing a really expensive camera that Roadrunner lent Slipknot once during one of their tours, but unfortunately that wasn't the last time something really bad happened because of his carelessness. During Slipknot's performance at the summer 2008 Rockstar Mayhem Festival, he fractured not one, but both of his ankles after he hopped off stage and plummeted into the audience. Following that, he had to wear a cast on both of his feet and had to get bound to a wheelchair. Hopefully he calmed down a little bit after that incident, though. Marlon Brando's eyes origin. The phrase, "You can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes," is a line of lyrics heard in the song Eyeless. There's been a long speculation and rumor surrounding where this line particularly comes from, and word is that it originates from a homeless man who would walk around screaming these words around the Los Angeles area. When the band were in Malibu developing their debut album, apparently Corey Taylor heard the man scream these words, hence how they got used as lyrics, but this is all just really speculation in the end. There's been no confirmation thus far as to what the line means or where it for sure comes from. Also, there seems to be some sort of conflicting info that the man that said these words didn't even live in California, and it was actually in New York City, so really there's no way to be sure either way. Why Joey was fired. Joey Jordison being fired from the band is definitely one of the more controversial topics in the fan community. Originally, the supposed reason for him being kicked out back in 2013 was that he developed transverse myelitis, I think that's how you say that, which effectively took away his ability to play Slipknot material. But considering he joined not one but 2 new bands after departing, it gives this theory very little, if any, weight, especially considering how technically demanding playing in a black and death metal band like Synesium would be. And unfortunately, due to his recent passing, we may never know the real reasons as to why he severed from Slipknot. Scissors live performances. Scissors is the 8-minute long final track found on the self-titled album, and it reportedly was Corey's favorite song to play live from this era because only the first 4 minutes of the song were playing to the actual written music, wherein the other half of the track was usually improvised on the spot, thus making the song a very unique experience every single time it was performed. Corey said in an interview that he actually got upset when they ceased playing it live. It's believed the last time Slipknot ever played Scissors was in the year 2000. Corey Taylor was homeless. This can refer to one of two things. The time when Corey was reportedly homeless around the age of 18, which he said in an interview was spent living under a bridge, or it can refer to the brief moment when he didn't have a set place to live during the band's writing of the Iowa album, when he was addicted to alcohol. Either way, it's a true anecdote. "515 Meaning." 515 is the title of the first track found on the Iowa album, and the reason why it's titled as such is because 515 is the area code for Des Moines, Iowa. That's literally how it gets its name. "Liberate Bananas." This refers to a misheard lyric in the song Liberate, where Corey Taylor says, "Liberate my madness," but the comical impression of mishearing him say, "Liberate bananas," has become somewhat of a meme in the fan community since. Limp Bizkit feud. Alright, let me just say right here, much like 90% of the other items on this iceberg, I'm familiar with what this is referring to, but I'm gonna have to say right here that the word feud is used very loosely in this context. It's not really much of a feud, it's more of just like an incident or two. Basically, what this is referring to is the time when Fred Durst went out of his way to act like Fred Durst. Fred Durst decided to, much like in Fred Durst fashion, go out of his way, run his mouth, piss some people off, and he succeeded in doing so. In this case, he referred to Slipknot fans as fat, ugly kids, and this apparently really pissed off Slipknot, and they made a bunch of death threats against him, like, you know, they apparently said, "Yeah, we'll kill you if you say that again, blah blah blah." Fred Durst pretty much just laughed it off, and was just like admitted to actually loving Slipknot and saying that he enjoys pissing the band off because it makes them angry and real. And I believe, I don't remember which member specifically said this, maybe it was Craig, maybe it was Clown, can't remember for sure, but the final word that they got out was, "Fred is afraid of us." Yeah. All in all, the whole thing was just kind of like pretty dumb overall. It's just Fred acting like Fred, and at the end of it all, it kind of felt really, really just manufactured. If you watch the band on Australian TV responding to his insult, it's so like comical. It's like watching a cartoon, seeing like Corey say, "We'll kill you." So yeah, it's like I don't even know what to believe. It's probably not even real for all we know. It was probably just an early 2000s marketing scheme. Craig Jones never talks. It's been established and well known since the band's early days that Craig Jones rarely, if ever, says anything. This has become especially apparent during the band's interviews where he really never talks at all. It's because of this he's garnered the pseudonym The Silent One. Despite being notorious for his silence, there has been one recollected event where he did break silence and uttered the single sentence, "If I wasn't in this band, I would probably be out killing people." I can't seem to find any footage of this interview where he says this, but it's been a long-standing rumor that I've heard ever since I was in high school that he did actually say this sentence. And let's just say I believe it, because Craig is pretty creepy, and I mean that in the most enduring way possible. He's just a lovable character. ICP encounters. This is kind of like a mini rabbit hole, so to speak, and the reason why I say that is because if you dig down and research ICP and Slipknot together, there's lots of allusions to ICP and Slipknot coexisting in the same radius, and it results in discussions of what exactly went on during these encounters. Needless to say, there's been quite a lot of times when Slipknot and Violent J and Shaggy crossed paths, but the most notable time was during the hilarious meeting on the Howard Stern Show. It's great. It's just Slipknot acting like Slipknot, and ICP are just very visibly uncomfortable. They look just awkward as shit. It's great. It's a great piece of history for 1999. the Clown's Whiskey. So, Sean Cran recently came out with his own brand of whiskey. It comes in a limited box, and it's number 9 Reserve Iowa whiskey. It appears Clown has been pulling a Maynard James Keenan lately. Just, instead of wine, it's whiskey, obviously. That's what this item on the iceberg refers to. I don't really know too much about it, I just know it's pretty pricey. It's going for about $150, and a lot of fans see it as a collector's item. Drugs, depression in Iowa. If you don't already know this, the making of the Iowa album has been heavily documented as the darkest and roughest time in the band's entire career. Setbacks such as Corey Taylor's alcohol addiction, Paul Gray's cocaine addiction, and many other members abusing pharmaceuticals such as Oxycontin were prevalent during this era. Even the first track on the album is Sid Wilson literally screaming out of his distressed realization that his grandpa just recently died. So basically, that sets the tone accordingly. Corey Taylor-Chad Kroeger feud. While researching this iceberg, I felt like this item was one of the few I didn't know about already, but after looking into it, I realized I kind of already caught wind of it in the past and must have forgotten about it because really, that's how minuscule it really is. Basically, this feud, if you want to call it that, was mostly just adults acting like children on Twitter, and the resulting music press around it, of course, had a field day with it because it's Corey Taylor, and as usual, they can't get enough of him for their headlines. Basically, Chad Kroeger, the frontman for Nickelback, just said Slipknot is a gimmick, and then said Stone Sour is Nickelback light, which is unironically kind of funny. And then Corey Taylor lashed back out with the most hilarious insult I've ever seen in my life, where he apparently called him Captain Ego from Planet Douche. That's something I would expect a 10-year-old to say, but it's not too interesting, but if you really care that much, you can easily find dozens upon dozens of articles about it. Mushroom Head feud. Just a small note, this will be the last item I will be covering on this video part, and technically this item belongs to the tier directly under the one we just finished, but I wanted to speak on this anyway because I really wanted to talk about this, so I figured it would be the best way to close the video. Anyway, Mushroom Head feud refers to the long-standing drama that Slipknot has had with fans, equating them to Mushroom Head and vice versa. Out of every other item on this iceberg that refers to a feud Slipknot was in, this definitely comes to being the closest to a true feud. The background behind this mostly stems to the fact that both bands carry a very similar aesthetic. Mushroom Head has always aggressively insisted since the early 2000s that they were the first ones to do the whole masked look, which they have evidence to support because Mushroom Head has been proven to have formed a few years before Slipknot. Because of this controversy regarding who did what first, a really long drama has existed between the fan community for both bands, and it's led to, let's just say, a lot of problems for the bands themselves. And what I mean by that is Slipknot had some problems in the early 2000s whenever they tore through Ohio, because that's the state Mushroom Head hails from, and if you haven't already guessed, Mushroom Head fans didn't like Slipknot too much. Because of this, Mushroom Head in the early days went out of their way to try to avoid playing in Iowa on their tours, mostly in an effort to avoid being pelted with rocks after the band were threatened with hate mail by Slipknot fans. All in all, the fandoms for both bands just really didn't like each other. Both bands insist they never really had a problem with each other, and it was just more so a big feud between both fandoms instead of the musicians themselves. Nowadays, Mushroom Head and Slipknot have been showed to be real cool with one another, and there hasn't seemed to be any fan backlash in years. So, I just want to say thanks for watching. This concludes the end of part 1 of the deep dive into the Slipknot iceberg. As I've said before, this is the first time I've ever made content like this, so please let me know if you enjoyed the video, like the video, comment below. If this video garners enough views and the demand is there to see the iceberg completed, I will get started on a part 2 video in the future. Anyway, check the description for links to social media. I'm active on my Instagram, and I will leave a link to my second channel as well. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Also, rest in peace, Joey Jordison. This video goes out to his memory.